Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your breakfast bankroll for Wednesday, May 4th, 2022. Today, we are blessed and honored to have a good friend on to the show, Bernie Fratto from Fox Sports Radio is blessing us for a few minutes today so we could get the behind the scenes on what actually transpired with Trevor Bauer, what to look for moving forward, and see if we can get all the meat on the bone, as we like to say in this industry. But without further ado, let's bring him on board, the one and only Mr. Bernie Fratto.
Hey, Jeff, good morning. Good to be with you.
Good morning, Bernie. How are you?
Doing wonderful. I got up this morning, read the obituary column. My name was not in it, so I had breakfast.
Amen to that. Amen to that. It just seems like so long ago, yourself, myself, Dave Sharapan, Mr. Lucky, sitting at the South Point, swapping war stories, getting ready for March Madness. And now we're here already in the month of May, the baseball season in its fourth week. We're almost a month deep. Trevor Bauer, breaking news, obviously last week, 2-year suspension. If anyone knows what's going on, it's you. So the stage is yours, my friend.
All right, so let's start right there. Obviously, last Friday, major news, as big a news surrounding Major League Baseball as I can remember in a long time, when it was reported that Trevor Bauer had received a 2-year suspension for Major League Baseball for violating their domestic abuse policy. Now, we've got an elite pitcher who's still fairly well in the prime of his career. The soonest he could pitch would be April of 2024. He does not get any credit for time served. 324 games is what he has to serve. When April 2024 rolls around, he will not have pitched in 3 years. His Dodgers contract will have expired. And that's actually probably the good news. So let's really get to the real news. And you sort of have to break this down into 3 parts. 1, how did we get here? 2, what's the current status? And 3, what happens next? So how did we get here? Records show that around April 21st of 2020, a subject who's referred to in air quotes as a Mrs. Hill or Miss Hill, I don't know, and Trevor Bowers had a consensual encounter. And allegedly that encounter got a little out of control. At one point, she lost consciousness, and the festivities continued to the point where she was allegedly punched, choked, and certain liberties were taken while she was unconscious. Subsequent to that, I believe there was even a second encounter between the two, but it started to cross the line of what you would consider to be polite society. So she filed a criminal complaint, I believe in LA County, and a pretty lengthy investigation ensued, a very thorough investigation. They poured through evidence, physical evidence, text messages, you had witness statements. And then in February, the LA County DA decided that he did not believe that the case before him could be proved beyond a doubt. And so criminal charges were never filed. All along this time, Trevor Bauer had been receiving these short extensions of he's in limbo. He was being paid. He wasn't suspended, but he was on leave, as it were, and not allowed to play. And that's when our conversations ensued. Well, since then, baseball had conducted their own investigation. And then on Friday, Trevor Bauer, the suspension was articulated by the commissioner, and a statement was given. And it kind of shocked the world a little bit for multiple reasons, because the story has a lot of layers. Now, one of the questions people were asking was, how can baseball suspend Trevor Bauer for 2 years, which is unprecedented? And by the way, baseball established a domestic violence policy as part of their CBA back in 2015. And since then, 15 players have been suspended, but they all worked out some sort of arrangement. Trevor Bauer is the 16th, but he's gone on offense in a lot of ways, and I think perhaps part of that comportment has started to work against him. But this still isn't done. So how does the question, the great unwashed we're asking is, how can baseball suspend Trevor Bauer if he was never charged criminally? Well, Major League Baseball reserves the right to mete out their own punishment after any investigation, regardless of what happened, whether there are charges, no charges, or even there's been a conviction. The commissioner's punishment is mutually exclusive from the player's fate in terms of anything that happens in the criminal justice system. So it's also important to note that baseball didn't even begin their investigation until the police concluded theirs. So I'm guessing the 2-month period between February and April, when this decision was handed down, is when baseball conducted their investigation, and I understand it was fairly thorough. So where are we right now? First of all, in terms of his contract, Trevor Bauer still owed $64 million over the next 2 years. Now, what happens there? Well, the Dodgers could release him and they could pay him. I doubt that's going to happen. I don't know. Or they could attempt to avoid the contract based on the fact that they would assert that Bauer violated the personal conduct policy. Again, that remains to be seen. That's where we stand now. Bauer has also filed an appeal. I think a pretty aggressive appeal. And the interesting thing behind that is there's no timeline. None of us know when that starts. I'll find out eventually, but that could be heard in the next 30 days, or I don't know when. It's a guess because no one knows. We're a little bit on uncharted ground there. So what happens next is the Dodgers have to decide whether or not how they're going to proceed with this contract, and Bauer has to, proceed with his appeal, and baseball has to hear it. After that, it's anybody's guess. Like I said, when April 2020, three things could happen. The suspension is upheld, 324 games, too bad, too sad, wouldn't want to be you. Or maybe a miracle happens and it gets lifted. I doubt it. Or something in the middle where it's reduced. Now, I've talked to a lot of people, and this is where a lot of speculation comes in, but it appears to me, and people that are pretty smart, that part of this is not gamesmanship or showmanship, but Rob Manfred's PR proclivities here, given the climate we're in this country, with these issues, which are very serious, and Major League Baseball. And let's face it, women love baseball, right? Chicks dig the long ball. Women go to baseball games. They play baseball. They play softball. It is America's pastime, whether people want to believe it or not. You pass the time night after night. I think George Will said it 100 years ago. Football is a series of one-night stands. Baseball's a love affair. It's all good. This isn't an apples and oranges argument. The bottom line is, what is the message to the population, particularly the female population, if Rob Manfred doesn't adjudicate this, in a swift and sure fashion? And he did. And it's still resulting in backlash. A lady from Sports Illustrated wrote a very good article saying, why are we paying attention to this guy? He committed very egregious acts. So there you have it in a nutshell, Jeff. And to a degree, we're all over the map here, not just in what took place and the police investigation and how baseball ruled, but the public consensus and the court of a public opinion, as you know, is very, very strong, and especially in situations involving domestic violence.
A lot of friends in my lanes have they're all over the map as well. Outside looking in, you get the naysayers. Well, he has not been proven guilty. They're bringing up all these facts on the Bauer side. Once the suspension came back, well, is it retroactive? And then my first initial thought was, well, he got paid this whole time. So if it was retroactive, technically, I assume he would have to give that monies back that he was paid for, sit out this year, and then technically he would be able to be coming back next year. But it's not retroactive.
No.
As you said to me, where today's society is. As I talked to you behind the scenes before we started this broadcast and brought up some other high profile cases and athletes that some paid their penance, some was able to come back, and some, Ray Rice, for instance, was not. You talked about 2000, 2010, and where we are today with social media, with there's a camera on every move for every person. I guess my first question, Bernie, to you is MLB doesn't want this. I mean, and we're not just picking on Trevor Bauer here. The 2-year suspension, as you said, is unprecedented. I think he's 32 or 33 now. He wouldn't be
31.
able to. 31. Okay. So 2 years without playing. He hasn't pitched in 2 years. So is this their way of basically saying, hey, Trevor, thanks, but no thanks? And I would assume, let's just say he does the 2-year suspension and goes away quietly. He'll never pitch in the MLB again, right, Bernie?
We don't know, but I will tell you, since we last talked when you were in Vegas, it's my understanding that other allegations have come out from two other accusers. One from 2013, I believe, in the Columbus area, and one in 2017 in the San Diego area. And I might be convoluting those. So don't. The key is, I believe, a lady from San Diego and a lady from Columbus also put forth similar allegations. And from what I understand, what I've been able to uncover is their accounts of the events that took place with respect to their little tag team wrestling with Trevor Bauer are identical. That's what I've been made. That's what I have heard. So that has to flesh itself out. Will he pitch 2 years from now? What if there are more accusers? What if there is more evidence that comes out that didn't come to light? Either way, right? Bauer has issued a statement, quote, in the strongest possible terms, I deny committing any violation of the league's domestic violence and assault policy. Well, I've read it. I've read the policy, and this is a tough one for Bauer, only in the sense that there's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And I don't know if he violated in the letter of the law because these events happen to be, apparently were consensual. So I think he has a right to be heard out. If we're going to be a fair civil society, right? I don't know about, none of us would want to be falsely accused of something. So the key is, how granular do we get when, apparently in the course of the investigation, there was, evidence that revealed physical injuries inflicted. But if it was consensual, but then at one point do you go too far? And one of the ladies' accounts that she woke up after being unconscious and realized she'd been violated in a way she didn't agree to. But, the LA County, law enforcement agencies did a thorough investigation. So I can't second guess that, nor can I judge Trevor Bauer. I'm trying to maintain objectivity here because you asked, will he be pitching again in 2 years? Let's draw the parallel, which I think it's fair. It's not a 100% analogous, but it's fair. So I was on the radio in Detroit in 2007 when Michael Vick was arrested, and he served time in a federal prison, I think 2.5 years. And I remember when he came out, he had a lot of gas in the tank, and there were teams that were interested. And I remember we took calls back then, and there were people teeth gnashing. Whoever signs him, we're going to blockade the stadium. We're not going to do animal rights groups. Well, he was signed by the Philadelphia Eagles. And I was very much in Michael Vick's corner. One, he had paid his debt to society. And I think he was truly contrite and truly engaging in activities that were mitigating the original situation. But not only that, trying to contribute to these groups in a genuine way to make peace. Now, he is also still a very good quarterback. Came back and played 6 years and was an all-pro a couple times. That's why he got to come back and play, because he was good. But I defended him. I said, hey, he did his time. You can't, you can't string this man up forever. That's not fair. And the Eagles aren't going to sign him as a charity case. He had to be good, and he was. In Ray Rice's situation, by the time he was ready to come back, you could have timed him with a sundial when he ran the 40. That's why he didn't come back. He couldn't help the Ravens anymore. I promise you, if Ray Rice could have still played. The other thing, too, is visually, when you saw him punch in the elevator, that that added a whole new dimension to the situation, and that did not help matters. So these situations are similar but different because Michael Vick's didn't involve domestic violence. Ray Rice's did. Both were over 12 years ago. Both were, or actually Rice 7, 8, 9 years ago. We're in a different culture now than we were then. And baseball is treating this a little differently than football is. And you've got a situation here where social media clearly is weighing in. And I think Rob Manfred is doing his best to try to keep baseball in a favorable light in the wake of some pretty tense labor negotiations. And so, baseball still feels like they have to, I believe, engage in fan-friendly activities with respect to how the image of their game is in the general public. And this is one of those situations. So a lot can happen in 2 years. What if, more probative evidence comes out that Bauer, perhaps was engaged in things we don't know about yet? That's speculation. I don't like straw man arguments. On the other hand, what if other women come out and testify on his behalf? Or what if he serves his time in 2 years and he's still able to pitch? Even, he's probably going to be pretty good on 1,100 days rest, right? I don't know. Might have some control issues, but who knows? Long and the short of it is this needs to play out because you don't know what you don't know. And in the last 60 days, since the LA County investigation, it's our understanding that 2 additional accusers have come out with some statement about this.
And I don't want to compare it because the actual acts that have come out on, what transpired with Bauer are entirely different to Desean Watson. Okay. So Watson, started out with 4 or 5 women, and now I think at one point was 21 or 22 women. He sat out for the year. He's since been traded. The assumption is he's probably going to get slapped on the wrist with some kind of suspension. But I think, and most parties are believing that they wouldn't have made this trade without the understanding that he will be playing this year in the NFL. Is there any comparison to the 2 cases? Take out the actual physicality on the Bauer acts compared to Watson, but is there a parallel here, Bernie, with the 2 cases?
Well, there's a parallel in the sense that whatever happened between Desean Watson and his accusers and whatever happened between Trevor Bauer and his accusers, it got the attention of law enforcement because criminal complaints were filed. But in both cases, you've got a situation where charges were not found over. The other comparison is that both, sides, Trevor and Desean, have defended themselves pretty vehemently, and Bauer's even suing his accuser for defamation, and I believe he's suing The Athletic for libel. So they both have pretty vehemently defended their right. One of the differences, though, is that the verbiage surrounding Desean Watson's encounters seems to be more benign than Trevor Bauer's. There's an account from the Washington Post that reported, quote, a woman alleged Bauer choked her without her consent, injured her while they had sex in 2017, then proceeded to send her threatening messages via text and social media. And a protective order was obtained, the Washington Post, and it remained sealed while the police report dealing the 2017 incident, which the woman showed police injuries to her eyes. Apparently that's been expunged now. So the other similarity is we're all sort of in a sea of confusion. You've got Bauer and Desean's version, and then you got the accuser's version, and somewhere in the middle lies the truth. The other thing, both commissioners are involved. Now, you asked if Desean Watson will play this year. I expect him to be in OTAs. I expect him to be in camp, and I expect him to be under center for the Browns until Roger Goodell decides to issue a suspension, which I believe is inevitable, which I believe will be about 6 games. And if it happens this year, then he does his 6 games and continues, and the civil matter proceeds. And the only people at risk here are the Cleveland Browns, who are on the hook for $230 million. So, again, yes, there are similarities, but there are also some differences in the details of both of these stories.
Trevor Bauer, now it's locked out physically of the MLB, suspended for 2 years. It's going to be nothing but PR, judges, court cases. The initial winner in all of this, and I hate to say it this way, obviously, is the Dodgers. And you touched upon this um, earlier in our conversation here. Um, are they basically at this point? What do the Dodgers do? Meaning, can they just cut ties, wipe their hands clean, say we're off the hook, and just move on? We don't have to deal with this PR hit. He's gone. It was a bad move on our part. How do the Dodgers handle this moving forward, Bernie?
Well, they're not paying him. And this is the part I have to investigate further, because if they do nothing, I'm assuming that and Bauer loses his appeal, um, and he has to serve the full 324 games. The contract will have expired in April 2024. He's owed 64, the original 102 million. As I mentioned earlier, the Dodgers have, if they want to do something demonstrative, they have two choices. They could release him, but then they'd have to pay him. Or they could attempt to get the contract voided and not have to wonder what happened. They'd have to assert that he violated the personal conduct policy, and you'd go from there, and that would be a different hearing. The more you start to peel the layer back, the issue is more optics and comportment from Trevor Bauer. I mean, apparently, when this woman filed the protective order in June of 2020, and there's this account, anybody can find this, I think, in the Washington Post from a couple of years ago. It's my understanding, allegedly, they reported that Bauer sent this lady threatening messages, including one that stated, "I don't feel like spending time in jail for killing someone, and that's what would happen if I saw you again." Now, that's pretty damning, all right? Now, Bauer and his attorneys have denied those allegations, and the woman that said the woman was creating a false narrative. But those text messages either exist or they don't. And even if they've been erased, they can be subpoenaed. They're there in the cloud somewhere. So these are the things I don't know. And so, Bauer's got a couple of good attorneys, and they're claiming what this woman was really trying to do is extort money from Bauer's and use these threats as a mean. And there's one allegation that said they tried to reach out to Bauer to demand $3 million to remain silent. So you see, now all of a sudden we're in a hell of a slippery slope here when you start to, sort of this word salad of allegations and accusations and events that either took place or didn't, involving text messages and physical acts themselves and how things were conducted afterwards. So I think a lot hasn't come out yet, to tell you the truth.
I know we only have a couple minutes left. You got a crazy busy schedule, and we're blessed to have you on. I guess I know we can go and catch your show this Saturday and probably get a lot of this, but we're a month in, Bernie. We'll be a month in on Thursday. Give me your thoughts for the state of baseball right now. A lot of people complaining about the balls, the lack of runs. Myself thinks, shortened spring season, spring training season, the fact that it's still cold, we turned the calendar. It's May, warmer weather's coming, more runs. The offenses will catch up with the pitchers. What's your thought process, the temperature of baseball in the first month so far, and where do you think it's going?
Well, first of all, and I'll unpack all of that. First of all, baseball is back. It's fun, and the fans are enjoying the hell out of it. Okay, we just got through April. And no one reacts and overreacts more than baseball fans because of the length of the season, right? Sparky Anderson said, first of all, you got to get 40 games in to realize what kind of club you got. He's right. And the beauty of the 162 game marathon is that it really separates the crap from the manure. So we are way too early to draw any conclusions. First 3 weeks, everybody said, Aaron Judge was nuts for not taking the $214 million. Now he's hitting home runs right and left and say, see, but it's still too early. It's still too early to determine whether or not he should have left that on the table. There have been allegations that you're using a lighter baseball this year. Baseball denies that. There have been allegations that I think baseballs they're required to keep a couple dozen in a humidor before the game. Is that causing the ball not to travel as far? Maybe pitching slightly ahead of hitting. Maybe things are just cyclical. I don't know. I know a lot of players that had slow Aprils. Heading into Sunday's games, and you'll appreciate because you're a gambling guy. The aggregate of home runs, and I talked about this on last Saturday's show, was well below last year. Last year, baseball was averaging 1.3 home runs a game. Up until Sunday, just this last Sunday, they were averaging .088 home runs a game, and runs were down. Everything was down, right? And then Sunday, cumulatively, baseball goes out and scores 134 runs, which was 21 over the projected amount of the grand salami bet that you can make every week, every day, having to do with the cumulative number of runs in a baseball game. We've got to let the whole season play out, honest to God. Ask Gene Mauch, right? He had the Phillies had it won in 1964, right? What was Mauch ahead? 5 games with 2 to play, and they still lost it. Anything can happen. So I think we're all overreacting. But the larger point is, man, baseball is back. The crowds are good, except for Oakland, and we're enjoying it. It's frankly, it's wonderful. And it's great to see the New York Mets doing well. The Dodgers and Giants pick up where they left off. You got New York and LA both doing well, 2 major markets. There are going to be some fun pennant races. There are fun teams to watch, like my Tigers. You've already had controversy about Kershaw being pulled in a perfect game going after 81 pitches. Hey, man, it's baseball.
I as you see, I'm smiling ear to ear. Even my Red Sox getting off to a slow start. They can't hit. Their pitching's been great, though, but they can't hit. And, I'm a big fan of yours with the Tigers. You got Erod over there. You got Turkelson, Correa. Life couldn't be better. I couldn't be more happier than obviously baseball being back. And it is a marathon. And you hit it correctly by saying, the season has just begun. Let's play this out. Just ask the Nationals a couple years ago.
Right. Right. How far under 500 were they in May? Right. And the Angels many years ago, they were way under 500 in May. And, here's the beauty. People are talking about the game. When Miguel Cabrera is walked with men on second and third in a 1-0 game in 9th inning and 2 outs by Boone, and the fans are going nuts. And the 2 guys calling the game, Jim Price and Dan Dickerson, I know those guys. They were hilarious. I go, good luck that team bus getting out of here. They were pissed. Everybody's talking about that. They're talking about the game. They're talking about the Mets getting hit by pitches and the bench clearing brawls and whether or not Kershaw should have been pulled, right? And I'm going to talk a lot of baseball on my show throughout the summer because the game has truly changed in the way it's managed and what the manager's allowed to do and what it's not allowed to do. And you got a lot of, really smart computer wonks that went to Amherst that quit the game because they hit 234 in Little League, but they got their brain in a computer and they're telling the manager how to manage his team, and there's a conflict. These are things we can talk about in future shows. But, hey, the game is being talked about. I remember one year when Yogi Berra managed the Yankees had their lowest attendance in April of 1983 in their history. George Steinbrenner was pissed. He calls Yogi into the office and says, Yogi, what the hell's going on? We're not getting any attendance this year. He goes, Mr. Steinbrenner, if the fans don't want to come out to the ballpark, you can't stop them.
Bernie Fratto, at Bernie Fratto on Twitter, at Fox Sports Radio. Bernie, last minute, tell them where they can catch you on Saturday.
My show is on Saturday nights, Fox Sports Radio, Sirius XM Channel 83, iHeartRadio, syndicated on 400 stations. It airs from 11 p.m. Pacific to 3 a.m. Eastern every Saturday night, Fox Sports Radio. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, tell your friends. If you don't like the show, tell your friends anyway.
We can't thank you enough. Anytime we can grab you, we'll grab you. And listen, thank you so much. Such a busy week ahead of you, and you gave us a half hour, gave us the scoop on Trevor Bauer, what's going on. And, of course, I will have an extra pot of coffee on Saturday, and I will be listening. So thank you again, Bernie.
Thanks, pal. Appreciate it.
All right, folks, so that is the one, the only Mr. Bernie Fratto. Stay tuned for more later this afternoon.